the biggest thing, of course, is what is the storm itself doing?
Absolutely. So let's get over to our chief meteorologist, Derek Beasley, to see where things stand with Irma right now. So, Derek, can you kind of update us on that?
Well, basically the storm now is the pressure has dropped a little bit, and that's what we noticed from the last advisory. Pressure down to 933 millibars. It was at 938, so whenever you have a dropping pressure, that indicates the potential there for some strengthening. So this storm looks like it is moving away from Cuba, which it interacted with Cuba last night into this morning and ran into a little problem, at least from the storm's perspective. It was certainly better for us for the storm to weaken, but we do not think that weakening trend is going to continue. It looks like the storm is beginning to strengthen right now, and we're going to be tracking this thing towards the southwest Florida coast. Looks like it should be making its first approach by late morning, early afternoon tomorrow, and then eventually moving through the state, the west part of the state. It's basically going to rake the entire west coast of Florida from south to north through tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, and into Monday morning. So, again, that track, again, taking it towards the north here, and it looks like by the time we head towards tomorrow afternoon, getting pretty close to the Lee-Charlotte County line, and then gradually tracking inland. So, basically, right up I-75, we're going to be looking at this storm moving northward with damaging winds. And anywhere near the eye is where we're going to be looking at those really significant winds. Those potentially Category 3, 4 winds are going to be immediately around the eye and the eye wall. That's where those big winds are going to occur. And then as it begins moving northward, we should see some slow weakening, although right now it looks like the chances of it weakening any further before it makes landfall tomorrow are very, very low at this point. So, again, the biggest issue with this particular storm, of course, there's several. The first being storm surge and the other being wind. And as you can see, the storm surge right now, the way it looks, is going to be basically 9 to 12 feet in some areas. So we're looking at 10 to 15 feet at the most with coming in at max high tide. You can see the storm surge potential there, greater than 9 feet above ground for Marco Island, Chokoloskee, Achapee, Everglades City, down in southern Collier County. We're also looking at significant impacts in Lee County. So basically from the Bonita Springs area northward all the way up along the Caloosahatchee. So if you live along the Caloosahatchee, you're going to see significant water rises. And I do think that people are underestimating the potential of this storm to produce storm surge. I'm telling you right now, this storm is going to be one that will be talked about for a long time, as it's going to produce a massive amount of water as it pushes inland. So you can see the red areas, the orange areas, that's where we're going to see significant water rise, greater than 6 to 9 feet. And like I said, in some areas, we could be looking at upwards of 10 to 15 feet of water rise. That's through the Iona area, Captiva and Sanibel, up towards Pine Island. Getting a little bit farther towards the north, let's take a look at Charlotte Harbor. You can see that we're going to also get some significant water rise in Charlotte Harbor as well. So Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda, we're going to be looking at big-time water rise there. And even up in the Sarasota County, we're going to see some water rise up towards the Inglewood area. But you can clearly see all of that red there showing that big-time storm surge potential that we're expecting with this storm as it rides its way up the coast. It's going to be rivaling some of the historic storms we've seen in southwest Florida, like Hurricane Donna in 1960. So just keep that in mind. This is nothing to play with. The wind is going to be in an extreme situation, and also the rain will as well. 10 to 20 inches of rainfall is expected. We're expecting some flash flooding. And, of course, the tornado threat is another thing that we're watching. Let's take a look at the radar right now and show you exactly where the radar, basically where the rain is. You can see the rain totals there, 5, 10, maybe even some spots up to 15 to 20 inches on the high end. But this is going to produce a lot of rain. If we can go over the radar, I can show you where the rain bands are occurring right now. And you can see how they're just kind of rotating from right to left across the screen. You can clearly see there the yellow is a tornado watch in effect till midnight. But you can see those bands of heavier rain associated with Irma as it begins to track inland, basically from south to north. And we're going to be seeing these bands track. And some of the heaviest rain right now is right along Alligator Alley, so over into Broward County, extending westward across Hendry into Collier County. Naples about to get some downpours, and it's not the question that we could see a couple of these little cells there rotate and produce tornadoes as they begin to push from right to left across the area. This tornado threat is going to continue through the overnight hours. As a matter of fact, it may increase as the shear begins increasing through the evening hours with those stronger winds. So Golden Gate down to Naples, some downpours headed your way. And not a question also that you could get some gusts up to tropical storm force now with some of these bands as they move through. Now, going back to a wider perspective here, showing basically how this is all going to pan out as we go throughout the overnight hours into tomorrow. And you can see, if we can go wider and show the entire DMA, you can see, or at least the entire viewing area, I should say, and you can see how those bands, the center of circulation is still well off towards the south, so you're going to gradually see the winds pick up through the day tomorrow. You'll see these waves of heavier rain and wind, and then gradually, as the storm gets even closer for tomorrow, the wind will become steadier and stronger. The rain will continue, and then it's in the eye wall that we're going to see those really strong, potentially dangerous, extreme winds within that eye. Now, one of the things that the National Weather Service issues now for an approaching eye wall landfall possibility is called an extreme wind warning. So don't be surprised if we talk about that tomorrow when the eye approaches the coast. Whenever there's a major hurricane making landfall, they will actually issue what's called an extreme wind warning for the area around the eye wall, and they will actually mark out the area that has the possibility of seeing those extensive damaging winds with the eye wall as it moves through. So that's something to pay attention to for tomorrow. This is just a computer model. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pan out this way, but it gives you a general idea of the wind gusts that we're expecting. 70, 80, 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts, gradually getting higher during the afternoon and evening hours on Sunday. And that's where we could see some 115, 120-mile-an-hour wind gusts, maybe even higher than that, up to 130, 135 with the storm as it moves through. That is, if it maintains that Category 4 strength. We're going to see those high gusts. But gradually things should start to improve, though, by the time we head towards Monday afternoon. That does not mean that it's going to be safe to go out. It just means that the wind is not going to be nearly as bad. I believe this is power outage potential, but you can see how the dark red, or the, I guess you would call that darker orange, and the maroon colors there showing severe power outages expected. Your power is likely going to go out. That's a new one. That's a pretty good map there to kind of give you an idea of the severity of these winds and what it potentially will do to the power grid and the power across all of Southwest Florida. We're looking at this moderate to severe power outages and extreme in some areas.
And it could be extended.
And extended, yeah. So I would plan on, having power outages for at least the power out for at least a week, maybe a couple of weeks or so. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here with that, with the power outages, of course, and then also the storm surge is another big issue that we're going to be dealing with, too.
I think that's something to keep in mind at this point as we track the storm for you. And by the way, we thank you for choosing Four in Your Corner for coverage of this storm. We know many of you are watching in shelters right now on your cell phone. We appreciate it. Make sure that battery stays charged so we can keep the conversation going. But so many of us have anxiety about the storm itself when it hits Southwest Florida. And you almost don't think beyond that. You go, well, I have enough water for, 12 hours or however long I think I might be out of my house. But what you've got to keep in mind is that the reason we tell you to pack for at least several days is because depending on the severity of the storm, and this is looking like a serious whopper, particularly for the coastal areas, and if you're west of 41, you should consider yourself part of the coast right now because there are mandatory evacuation orders in effect. You're going to need as many supplies as you can. But worst comes to worst, just make sure you're safe. The supplies will come once you get to the shelter.
Absolutely. You remember a lot of us went through Charlie together, and, that had a severe impact in Charlotte County, Punta Gorda, obviously in other areas too. But I remember being in Cape Coral without power for, I think it was 10 or 12 days. So you really do need to prepare for that possibility. It could be a long time.
And again, we don't like to compare storms, but just to kind of give you an idea of how small Charlie was. This storm, we're looking at a wind field, at least the hurricane force winds are about twice the size of what we saw with Charlie. And also, of course, the tropical storm force winds go out much farther than that. So this is a bigger storm. It's going to impact a wider area than Charlie did. And so you definitely have to come to terms with the fact that you're likely to be out without power for a long time. And hopefully you prepared for it if you decide to stay.
I think a lot of people had the perception about Charlie, too, that it was one and done in that the storm seemed to move in quickly, but then the impact ended. And this seems like Southwest Florida may get lashed over a longer period of time. Was that right?
Yeah, Charlie was a small, but it was also a fast-moving storm. And you remember how quickly it moved into the coast. And the hurricane force winds really didn't last that long. Maybe about a half hour, so the really bad winds, and it was quickly out of the area. It was up in Orlando by nightfall. This storm is slower, it's bigger, it's wider, so you're going to have a more prolonged period of those winds, and of course the hurricane force winds are going to last a little bit longer as well. So that's again what some of the differences that we're going to be dealing with for the last big storm that affected Southwest Florida.
So when you say prolonged period of time, what can people expect in the real, nitty gritty of this when they are hunkering down, whether they're at a shelter at home? Are you talking a couple hours, several hours?
For hurricane force winds, I would prepare for maybe 7 hours of hurricane force winds.
Wow, 7 hours.
a long time. It's a long night.
Because when you
especially
think
at
about
night.
it, yeah, especially at night. So when you think about it, if the hurricane force wind field goes out about 70 miles, and let's say that the storm does go over you from south to north, give or take, it could be about 5 hours or so. But if it's still moving at about 10 miles an hour, maybe 12, it's going to take that long for the entire wind field. And there's a chance, though, that the wind field could expand a little bit more. It could get even wider. So it could be up to 80 miles of hurricane force winds, total diameter. So you prepare for the fact that you're going to be dealing with winds over 70 miles an hour for 2, 3, 4, certainly like 3, 4, 5 hours, maybe even longer than that, and definitely tropical storm force winds, because we're already starting to see that now across parts of our southern part of the of Collier County.
Kind of sobering to hear that. For sure, nothing we've ever seen in Southwest Florida before.
Just think about it. Donna, other than Charlie, Donna was the last really big, just nasty storm that a lot of people talk about that came through Southwest Florida. So it's been that long since we've had anything of that significance other than Charlie.